Hi friends, my name's Julia. Today we're going to talk about how do we start the divorce process on the right foot. Since you are here watching this video, I assume you have thought through the decision process and have exhausted all the options to reconcile and finally decided to move forward with the divorce. And if you have not done the decision process, I recommend you go over the decision process video I have and make sure you have done everything you can to make the best decision possible for you and your family. So what we're going to do today is to walk through the next step, which is to set a good foundation to make this difficult process as least painful as possible. So the first question we need to ask is this the right time? There is never a good time for divorce. However, there are times that you need to avoid. For example, if you have a loved one, a family member that you are close to and has a medical condition that may be severely negatively impacted by the divorce, or one of your kids is going through a crisis or a critical phase in their life. For any of these cases, it might be better to wait a little bit and wait until the crisis is over or at least in a better place. Not only is this very important to your family, it's also better for you. It is hard enough to deal with a crisis or the divorce. Trying to do both of this at the same time is really, really hard for you. There are two common mistakes people often make in this process. Mistake number one, many people do not take the time to plan for this process and set a goal that's good for them for the long term. Many assume the only goal in this process is to maximize what they can get financially. This is very understandable, and it's very natural to fear for the future at this time and want to secure as much as possible during this overwhelming and difficult life transition. And because of this mindset, despite their normal nature of being kind and generous, couples can act very selfishly and quickly become enemies, and the divorce process becomes a war. Yes, splitting the property and the financial arrangement is a critical part of this process, but it is not the only one. Having this as the only goal can lead to a very difficult divorce. Common mistake number two. Once they decide to go forward with a divorce, many people immediately hire a divorce attorney to start the process. They do not give themselves enough time to think and try to set a good foundation for this process. Most of the time, they hire the lawyer way too early, and usually also let the lawyer lead the process rather than lead the process. And of course, the divorce attorney would normally say something like this: I'm here for you. I will protect your interest and I will help you get most out of this. Although the lawyers is very helpful in navigating the legal process, but don't assume the lawyer and you have the same objectives and interest. Remember, from the lawyer's point of view, this is mostly just another divorce case they have to handle. The lawyers get paid more if the divorce process increases in complexity and lasts longer. I'm not saying your lawyer will intentionally make your divorce harder and longer. Because of the divorce war, more than their differences in the marriage, the two people who used to be life partners sometimes become arch enemies, and later have many years of resentment towards each other because of the process itself. There are 3 steps I recommend for you to take before you start the legal process. The first step is to take time and clearly understand your priorities. Figure out what is your desired and reasonable outcome from this process. Here is an example of somebody who went through it. Number 1, I want to stay in the house until our son finishes high school so we don't disrupt his life. Number 2, I want the kids to be with me most of the time because my ex-partner travels all the time and cannot take care of them. Number 3, I want my ex to support us financially until the kids turn 21. This includes helping paying for college. So what are yours? So take some time and write down what are the top priorities for you to finish the divorce process. And after you have figured out and have written down your priority list, ask what is important to your ex-partner, and then sit down with your ex and understand each other's priority and try to find common ground between two of you without a third party. Write down all the major things you can agree on. I know what you're thinking. You might be saying, hey, Julia, you don't know us. We argue all the time. That's why we are getting a divorce. If we can't agree with each other when we were married, how do you think we can agree with our divorce terms? Please hear me out. This is why I think not only it's possible, but it's very likely. At the end of the day, both of you want the divorce, and you will reach an agreement of some sort. It's a matter of how you get there. Do you want to fight all the way, pay a lot to the lawyers, or by working together and keep it simple and relatively civil? My friends, you are wise and sensible, except when you are emotional. May I suggest that you choose the second approach in trying to work with your ex? And you might still doubt this is doable, but think about it. You two know each other very well, probably the best in this world. And both of you love your kids, and both of you want to get out of this marriage as painless as possible. You have a lot in common now than before, than you might have realized. So you'll be surprised how much you can agree on without emotion getting in the way, without a third party meddling in the middle. And here's a sample list of items that you may want to discuss and try to get an agreement before hiring a lawyer. Number 1, how to split your assets. Number 2, future expenses, including kids' college tuitions. Number 3, kids' arrangements, time, and roles each of you will play in the kid's life. Number 4, what and how to communicate with the kids going forward. Number 5, list of things that you will need to discuss when they come up in the future. You may not have all the answers, but just make a list of those things. Number 6, a few critical what-if scenarios. What do I mean? What happens if one of you gets married? What happens if one gets injured or, God forbid, dies? Remain as cool as possible and try to agree on the principle, and sometimes, if not possible, to get to the details. And if you become emotional and start arguing, take a break and regroup later. In addition to the other major items, there are two important agreements you need to include in the discussion. Number one, the time frame of the divorce process. Yes, you heard me. Most people set a timeline for their wedding, but rarely do people set the timeline for the divorce. And most of the divorce process seems to take a life of its own, and it just happens. And the case drags on, mostly for disagreement on small things. But divorce process is costly, and the longer it takes, the more expensive it gets, both financially and emotionally. Think about this. Do you really want to waste a few years of your life in a miserable and costly legal battle for small things? It's not worth it. So the time frame of a divorce process is your goal of how long you want this to last. You should read something like this. We should target to finish this process and send in the paper in the court in 3 months. And we should not let the divorce process drag and last longer than 4 months max. This is a breakdown of the timeline. We'll get to agreement between us in 4 weeks, and then we ask the lawyer to draft a legal version in 2 weeks. Then we will iterate and review for another 2 weeks. And if we can't get agreement on the details of how to split, the default is split 50-50. And we'll get all the materials, required paperwork together in the following 4 weeks. So together, that's about 3 months. And then the second item need to be included in the discussion is the roles and responsibility of the lawyers. Again, this is one of the areas typically people just let it happen. And the lawyers are smart, articulate, and they are happy to take the lead for you. But you want to make it clear to both yourselves and the lawyer that you are the decision makers. The lawyers are there to execute your decisions, not making decisions for you. You and your ex should have time by yourselves to discuss and make decisions without the interference of the lawyers if possible. Here are a few tips that will help you during the process. Number one, be aware of your own emotions and intentions. Right now, you probably feel very sad and very hurt right now. The life you knew is disappearing in front of your own eyes, and the future is unknown and can be very scary. Most likely, your ex is probably feeling similar. So it is in your best interest for both of you to make this parting process as smooth as possible by undertaking this process as two very gracious human beings. Number two, focus on what needs to be agreed on and what needs to be done. Try to avoid looking back and the discussion of why the relationship failed and whose fault it is. Trust me, it is very easy and is very tempting to rehashing the blames because you are still hurting. But that doesn't help anyone. You don't need to figure it out right now. You already decided to get a divorce. You already said goodbye. You don't have to live them anymore. The marriage is already in the past. It's over. It's done. Number three, keep the relationship cordial if possible. As mentioned earlier, you both will likely need to see each other later because you need to coordinate for the kids. Please keep in mind when making decisions throughout this process. And let me say, in the rare cases that your ex is violent or really just not open to work with you, you should hire a lawyer rather than working directly with your ex. I hope that's not the case for you. But should that be the case, please do what's needed to protect you and your family. Number four, one last thing. Follow the 80-20 rule. Seek to get 80% of what your desired goal in a shorter time rather than get 95% or 100 of what you want in a longer legal battle. Let go of 15 to 20%, you may ask. That's a lot. Why should I give up? Here's the logic behind. First, it is very unlikely you will get all or 95% of what you want. Secondly, here, if you are rich, then the 15% is probably a lot. But your life is already good. It will be fine without that 15% anyway. It is much better to move on with your life faster, with less trauma. And if you're not very rich, the 15% may not be that much. A lot of it will go to the additional legal fees anyway, with a lot extra pain on your part. So why bother? We have talked a lot. Let's summarize together what we have talked about so we can start this process on the right note. Step 1, take time to get clarity on your priorities. Step 2, try to get agreement with your ex without the third party. Step 3, leverage the lawyers as your assistant in the process, not as your lead for important decisions. Step 4, use the 80-20 rule as your guideline. My friends, if you have done all this hard work, I am very proud of you. And when the divorce process is done, you will thank yourself for doing this and for making it as short and as painless as possible. And I hope you find some of these suggestions helpful. Please let me know and also share with others in the comments below what suggestions you have found helpful. What are the ways you have found in your process that worked for you? And what are the hard lessons learned that you wish you have not done? Life is hard and divorce is really difficult. But remember, my friends, you are not alone in this. We are all together in this, and we are all here to help each other. Thank you.